Welcome to Protiviti's Board Perspectives, where we go inside C-suites and boardrooms to talk about today's most transformational issues and their impact on tomorrow. I'm your host, Joe Cornick, and our guest today is Diane Gherson, former CHRO of IBM, where she was responsible for the people and culture of IBM's 360,000-person workforce covering 172 countries. Diane redesigned all aspects of the firm's people agenda and digitally transformed the HR function, incorporating AI and automation, including IBM's Watson, across all offerings. Diane is a certified executive coach and board member at the Kraft Heinz Company, Centivo, TechWolf, and the National Academy of Human Resources. Diane will be sitting down with Protiviti Managing Director and Global CHRO Team and People and Change Lead, Fran Maxwell. Fran, I'll turn it over to you to begin.
Thank you, Joe, and Diane, thank you so much for being with us today. We definitely appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
So we will have probably a lot of ground to cover, but I'd love to maybe start with a two-part question, which is, you've been in the forefront of HR transformations for a lot of your career, particularly at IBM. What initially drew you to the HR field or function, and how has your perspective evolved over the years?
Yeah. Well, I started, as you know, Fran, in compensation. And before that, I had been a general management consultant, and I felt like we were doing a lot of waving our arms, but weren't really getting into any depth around the stuff that we were covering. So I joined actually a compensation consulting firm, and I realized that actually compensation was sort of change management in drag. You know, you get to do change management, but no one ever uses those words. And though, you know, that was a long time ago before change management came into its own, but I got to do a lot of organizational change work as a result, and really fell in love with the profession. I had no experience as an HR business partner when I joined IBM. I joined as the global head of compensation and benefits, and actually knew nothing about benefits either, which was quite a challenge. But I loved it, and I thought it was just going to be a short stint to do a transformation there, and it turned into a 19-year career. So I really fell in love with the profession at that point.
Lovely, lovely. Well, it's really an exciting time to be in the HR function, myself being in it for the past 25 or 30 years. There seems to be such transition time with low talent supply, this thing that's called AI. What's your perspective on how you see the HR function evolving over the next, say, 1 to 3 years?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think it's really taken off since COVID, actually, where we realized that many of the sort of existing parameters and what it means to have a job and what employment looks like started to change dramatically. As we all know, as we started to have people work remotely and started to reconsider, the 5-day work week and things like that. So I think now we're at a point where HR is needing to involve. It's really at the intersection of people, technology, and real estate. And if you don't have your arms around all three of them, you can't really be looking at work, which is really the topic, as opposed to HR, which is a set of processes that more and more are being taken over by AI. And to articulate our profession as a set of processes is sort of backward looking. It's sort of like buggy whip like. So we can't be doing that. We need to be thinking about what's the purpose of the function, and the purpose of the function needs to be really carefully considered. But I do think it has a lot to do with making work meaningful, as well as to be productive, and that takes your arms around a lot of different areas than the traditional processes.
Yeah. Well said, because we're having a lot of conversations with clients right now about the almost the philosophical side of HR. Are you about employee productivity? Are you about managing processes? Are you about managing performance? So really good overall view on that one. What functions within the HR function do you think are going to shift the most over the next few years?
Well, I think they're all shifting. The one that I realized with HR I didn't need anymore was the HR business partner role, which I think was, well intended as a kind of gatekeeper, general contractor job as a generalist for HR many years ago when we didn't have the capability of Gen AI and machine learning and so forth. And so, I actually eliminated that role, first of all, for the first line managers. We had about, I think, 12,000 of them. And then for the next level up, and my successor has gone all the way to the top. So the CEO also uses the AI tool instead of the AI agent, instead of having an HR partner. So I do think there's a need to kind of rethink from the ground up what is HR, right? And to what extent can AI take over certain processes, and then kind of rethink the shape of HR. It doesn't need to be as functionally oriented. We ended up organizing around problems, and solutions, and that's the way our managers think. They've got a low performer problem, or they've got a restructuring problem, or whatever, and they need a group of multidisciplinary people to help them with their problems. So I think that's probably the more likely outcome. At least that was my experience.
No, that's super helpful. And again, just providing sort of what we see broadly is the Ulrich model. So that three circle HR business partner, HR shared services, COE model still seems to be the most prevalent. But from the consulting I've done over the years, it does seem like the HR business partner is ripe for the biggest transition in that it was always positioned to be a consultative role. But in most organizations, we've seen it continue to be transactional, right? And that it's not necessarily the goal of it overall. And now with AI in place and organizations focusing a bit more on skills, to what we're seeing is a continued impact on that HR business partner role being more skills and data focused, and even a little less on the consulting side. We were talking a little bit about skills. I'm curious from your point of view, how do you see the learning and development function evolving?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, skills are the lifeline of companies, right? It's the fuel of performance, and we haven't really had a good handle on them for many years. They've been sort of hand done and manually approved and all this sort of thing. And we're now at a point where AI can infer them, people can update them all the time, get validated, and that certainly helps with upskilling and reskilling, which is the critical thing of the moment, right? As we introduce AI. What I've seen is there are firms like TechWolf and others that are able to identify based on the company's internal postings, external postings, as well as anything else that they can get their hands on. They can actually identify what jobs can be upskilled, that are going to be augmented by AI, and what the upskilling requirements are, and what jobs can be automated, and what are the skills that can't be automated. So this gives a lot of raw material to the learning and development function to rethink, okay, so what's the best use of people here? And how can we make sure that we have the upskilling capabilities to get them to the next level?
It seems like the onus or the importance of an organization being able to upskill their population quickly and efficiently is becoming more and more important. Is that something that you're seeing as well? Because you'd think that that function then needs to become more operationally efficient than maybe it has in the past.
That's right. Yeah, no, I think upskilling is really important. And so the talent folks and the learning folks need to work together on that and identify what are the adjacent skills that are in demand, if indeed certain skills can be done more efficiently by AI. And so learning and talent don't normally work well together. So this is an important thing to say. I cross them over, right? I move people across to sort of, build relationships and trust, but they do think differently. And I think that's one of the challenges that a CHRO has in pulling this off.
What do you think the most pressing skill set is going to be for the HR professional in the next few years?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, certainly we've seen a huge upswing in people analytics capabilities, which is very, very important. And I think there's much more strategy being done I mean, speaking as a board member, I feel like HR is still too mired in the details. And so how do you get HR to pull out from it and kind of identify the broad themes that need to be addressed? Um, so as an example, organizational health, right? Just giving the results of an engagement survey, isn't helpful, right? But if you're thinking about it from the standpoint of where's the risk here? Where do we have risk? You start looking at things very differently. You might look for matching patterns and concerns and appeals and employee relations investigations with your results of your engagement survey in certain pockets and identify micro pockets of concern. Then you might match that up against performance, and you might match that up against turnover and things like that. So to be able to articulate, here's where we have pockets of concern, and then here's what we're doing about it. But you're using a lot more data than, oh, we're above or below some, best practice median. It's not meaningful, right? So I think it's to be able to think more broadly, more strategically is, yeah, I speak that as a board member now. I
Sure,
just think it's
sure.
the number one issue that I'm seeing is missing.
Back at your time at IBM, and I know you and I have had a quick conversation about this in the past, you were one of the first to implement AI in the HR function,
Yep.
which is obviously very impressive. How did this impact your team? And then how did it impact the skills of your team?
Yes, well, first of all, we didn't do it just for the fun of it. We did it because we were needing to do a lot for the business and we didn't have capacity, right? So we were lean as it was, and we needed to cut our budget 10% a year. And the reason for that was we were changing over our portfolio and we needed to invest in new areas. So we needed to free up dollars for investment. Okay, fine. At the same time, when you're changing over your portfolio 50%, that means huge amounts of change, right? So we needed to change how we worked. We need to change out our skills. We needed to reorganize. There was just a lot that needed to get done. So along to the rescue came Watson. And I had done work with Watson when I'd been head of talent, and I had been working with AI and pulled in some of the data scientists into my unit. I had also worked with the design unit in the software development labs, again, when I was head of talent on a project, and I pulled in some design people. And so the combination of people with design skills and data science skills, AI data science skills, enabled me to create better employee experience, better manager experience while reducing my headcount, and moving my headcount into the areas that help the company transform. So that's why it happened. I was just really, really lucky that we had Watson, and the way I got HR excited about it was we were just introducing Watson into the marketplace. And I said, wouldn't it be great if we could be the showcase of AI to the rest of our clients, right? And to our employees. So if they can experience it, they can talk about it knowledgeably to their clients and show it to their clients. And so, that's an easy win, right? So that made them really proud. And honestly, it was an easy thing to do for me. I did not experience pushback at all.
That's great. That's great. So no change resistors. That's often what when
Well,
we
I'm
hear.
sure there
Yeah.
were, but there was so much excitement in the air, right? About
Yeah.
changing the company, changing what we did, the role of HR. Our CEO went on, Squawk Box and Mad Money and talked about what HR was doing in IBM, and it just made them so proud.
That's great. That's super. Very exciting. So last question, maybe thinking philosophical. If you had to design the HR function today, what would it look like?
Well, I think it would look a lot more like a business. So what I mean by that is, I think you would have people who are involved in strategic issues, right? So think about that as, maybe your marketing intelligence, the kind of more strategic group, that's looking on the outside a lot, looking, solving issues at a strategic level for the businesses. Then you might have a group that is I call them product managers. And we call them offering managers at IBM. And the whole idea was you don't run a function, you have offerings, and those offerings are only as good as the NPS score that you get for them. And if they're not good, you throw them out, right? You don't just keep offering them. So that was a mind shift, right? Was to have product managers, and that was really, really important. As I said before, I think talent and learning and development need to come together in some way. I did do that when I was head of talent and learning. I had both of them when I was before I took over as CHRO. It was very hard, and it didn't last. So I have to acknowledge that I did not get that to work, but I do think they are together. I mean, they're all about the skill set of the people in the company. Um, I think it's becoming more important as we all introduce AI and Gen AI because the human skills are required to progress. And what I mean by that is the intrinsic knowledge that you build up through experiences. And so that brings me to my next one, which is work design. And we need to stand up a work design function. We can't just put in AI bolted onto the organization. We know that that doesn't result in productivity. With MIT study, 5%, has any improvement. So even if you do improve, the benefits go to the employee and not so much to the company. So the company starts questioning it. So we do need to be thinking about work design. How do we create the experiences that people need to progress their careers, and to grow leaders while we're introducing AI. And that's a serious issue that not enough companies are spending time on. They may be replacing jobs with AI, but they're not thinking, okay, but now this person has lost the hands-on experiences that when they're, a vice president, they can go back to in their heads and go, but I know how this is done. I know what those issues are. I know what to look for. We're creating jobs that babysit the AI. They look for, AI issues, bias or whatever, quality, but they're not growing their own professional skill. And this is, in my mind, critical. Right now, we're fortunate we have people who did grow up that way, who are the next level up. But one generation later, 10 years from now, we're going to have a group of people who haven't had those experiences and haven't got that grounding. And that's a serious, serious issue. So the work design group probably needs to sit with the talent and the development group. But it's a critical capability. And I would say most HR functions don't have that skill set inside. As I said, I brought in people from design, which was very helpful. And we may need to think about that, but there is a need for that as a really, really important function.
Great call out. We're seeing it in two forms. The first form is the most immediate, which is we've implemented AI and now we need to redesign someone's work because they're not doing the same things that they used to do, which is a very reactive way. What we're hoping to guide clients on is the proactive way, which is you have these new early career professionals, which many of their tasks and jobs have been taken away from AI. How do you now create meaningful work for them that gets the individual the experience they need, but also pushes the company forward? That's that proactive lens we need more companies to start to think through.
Right.
So you don't want that 5-year gap of, oh, we didn't hire any new people. You're going to have such a problem in your workforce.
Or maybe you did hire them, but all they did was mind the computer and sit
Great
at
place.
home,
Yep.
and mind the computer. And they didn't build that situational awareness, that context understanding, that intrinsic knowledge that is so important. That some people call it social intelligence. It's so important as you progress your career.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate the valuable insight. Such a pleasure having someone who's on the forefront of implementing AI in the HR function. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It was fun, Fran. Thank you.
Good seeing you again. Joe, appreciate the time. We'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks, Fran, and thanks, Diane. And thank you for watching Protiviti's Board Perspectives. On behalf of Fran and Diane, I'm Joe Cornick. We'll see you next time.